Welcome to the System Simplified podcast, where we feature top leaders who share stories on how to successfully systemize a business. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hello, Adi Klevit here, the host of the System Simplified podcast, where I feature top founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders about systematizing a business. And today's episode is being brought to you by Business Success Consulting Group, where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures so businesses can grow and thrive. And today's guest is Jimmy Burroughes. Hi, Jimmy.
Hi, how are you, Eddie?
Good. It's great to have you on this podcast.
Thank you for inviting me along. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So I'm going to read your bio, and then we're going to have a great conversation about systematizing a business and running a business and everything, and how you help business owners to do better and thrive.
Sounds good.
Okay. Very good. So you are a former British military officer, and you turned into Fortune 500 leadership consultant, but not just Fortune 500, you also help mid-market, so basically business consultant.
Yeah.
And you have transformed 3,000 plus leaders across 20 plus countries using your signature Simplify to Amplify. It's perfect for the System Simplified podcast. So Simplify to Amplify methodology. And you remove the organizational friction to amplify performance by an average of 47% in 90 days. That's quite an accomplishment. Okay, so welcome to the System Simplified.
Thank you so much. I think we're going to have a good nerd out here, aren't we?
Absolutely. So I'm curious about the 47% improved average of performance in 90 days.
Mm-hmm.
How do you measure it?
A variety of ways. I think, the easy ones are, does revenue go up? Does margin go up? Does the business do better? But we're also looking a little bit deeper than that. And if I think specifically about the leadership role that most of the people who are listening will be playing, they're founders or managing directors or GMs within a business, it's the available time they have to work on what I call the strategic stuff versus putting out fires day to day. So we aim to give people back between 4 and 6 hours a week to put into working on the business, growing the business, making it more effective, and not working in the business. We're also looking at things like number of decisions made. We're looking at number of decisions escalated. We're looking at the amount of meetings that people are involved in, and we aggregate all of that data and many other factors as well, but we're aggregating all of that data into a significant performance improvement on the business. And then 47 is kind of the average. I can give you an example. I worked with a kitchen company in the UK, and in the space of 2 years, they've done 300% on their revenue and 200 and something percent on their margin. So there are outliers at both ends of the scale, and you need to do the work as well. But it is very, very possible to have a significant shift in 90 days.
That's fantastic. So definitely simplify to amplify. There are a lot of things that are added to our day-to-day activities to running a business that they don't need to be there. So how did you translate or use your experience from being a British military officer to business?
It's such an interesting little journey. And if I think back to my time in the military, I spent most of my career in various deserts around the world doing various things. And a lot of the time outside of those operational deployments was spent training and getting the guys and girls ready to go to wherever it was. And one of the things I noticed is when the bombs and bullets are flying, you don't have a lot of cognitive bandwidth to think through something really complex. Because you've already got enough stuff going on, you're
That's
scared.
right. You have to be prepared right there.
Yeah.
Do, right? Okay.
Yeah. You need something that just works in the heat of the battle. And what I noticed as I went through my corporate career is that a lot of leadership theory and practice is extremely academic, is very well thought out, but it's so complex and it's so overwhelming for somebody who hasn't got a lot of cognitive bandwidth that I wanted to go the opposite way. And I thought, when I was in the military, you had mnemonics and three-letter words and very simple ways of getting a message across quickly or of knowing what you had to do step by step. And so what I did was I took that principle and I applied it to leadership and business consulting. So what we've essentially created in our methodology is an identification of 42 business challenges that we see time and time and time again, of which about 6 to 12 of those are in nearly every business.
What are those?
And
Let's name the six. Let's name the six that you feel like they're common to, six challenges are common to every business.
where do I put my time and energy when everything seems urgent and important? Why don't the people who work for me do what I'm asking them to do? Why do people keep bringing me their problems? How do I know I don't trust that person, or I know I do trust that person, but I don't know how to deepen that trust. So how do I do that? Why do I have so many meetings and nothing seems to get done? There's so many of them. Why is it that I'm involved in so much and never get any time to do any work? And they go on and on and on. And what we've created for each of those is essentially a one-page playbook that allows a leader to have what I call them thinking buckets, but essentially to think through a process that is almost commonsensically obvious once you've got your head around it, that it becomes their new operating system. It becomes the way that they do stuff, and is designed very carefully with lots of neuroscience and lots of academic underpinning, but is designed to be simple, not necessarily easy, but simple. So they go, oh yeah, I can do that. And then they start using it. And then what we do is we do implementation support over the next few months to help them basically make that their new normal habit. And it's standardizing an approach to leadership. And so what we've talked through is two of our simplify to amplify methodologies. See the right things to do, clarify what I should be doing and share that with everybody else. Solve using a playbook. And then the final piece of the methodology is scale or amplify it. And so this is because it's so simple and because it feels like the right thing to do, I have confidence to share it with the people around me. And that means that they're going, oh, I can do that. And we shift the way a business operates, which is why you have this kind of ripple effect or amplification effect of the leader's impact of their own capability, but also you get everybody else singing off the same song sheet, and things start to change really, really dramatically quickly.
Right. So that's really important in order to create a team. You just said it, everybody's singing off the same song sheet. That's very, very important, because that's how you create a team, because they're all moving in the same direction. Just like you have in the army, if people are going to go in different directions where you want them to go straight, it's not going to happen. But you also can command to do that. They have to feel like they want to all go together in the same direction. So implementation, go ahead. Sorry.
And what we see so frequently, I mean, one of the activities we do in a workshop is we ask everybody to close their eyes and point to north. And what happens is you end up with people sort of pointing in every direction. And they all believe they know where north is, or they don't know where north is and they're guessing. And the very same principle applies in the workplace. That we've got people who believe they understand why the team exists, what the priorities for the team are, what today's workload should be look like, what they're responsible for, what their workload should be. They believe all this stuff, or they have no idea and they're guessing. But that has a consequence on the way they interact with everybody else in the business and in the team. So part of what we do is getting everybody knowing where north is and how to go there and what that looks like. And what their role in it is and what the benefit of them getting it right is for them and the business. And when you start to understand this stuff, immediately we're taking away the friction from what's getting in the way of the business performing. And I'm sure you see this in your work, and I certainly do, that most people are working pretty hard and most people are doing their best.
Right.
But we use the analogy of rowing a rowing boat through treacle. So we need to remove that friction, and it allows good people to do good work, but with more direction and clarity.
That's very true. That's very true. What we find is that, you document the processes, you optimize it, but then the implementation, that's the hardest part because you have to be persistent. You have to make sure it happens. What are some of your best practices to make sure that those habits or those playbooks that you are now want to change and create, that you actually can implement those?
I think there's probably like 3 or 4 things. I'll go through a couple. Um, when I first started consulting, the sexy topic for a lot of consultants to teach was crucial conversations, and so there were all these very elegant, elaborate crucial conversations frameworks that came out, and the variety of titles, but difficult conversations, tough conversations. How do I deal with somebody who isn't turning up to work on time, or isn't performing, or isn't dressed appropriately, or whatever it might be? And so they taught all of these frameworks. When it came down to implementing it, people were kind of left to it. You've been taught it now, go use it, with very little support. And what didn't get dealt with was the beliefs of the manager who was being taught. So if we think about this, I'm a manager and somebody isn't turning up to work properly, and isn't working to the standard I want. So I have to have a tough conversation with them. But if I genuinely believe that having a tough conversation with them might end up in an altercation, or they're going to argue with me, and I don't like arguing, I get nervous, and I might make a mistake or do something I shouldn't say something I shouldn't say, or that person could become violent, or they might leave, and that's just going to add to my workload. Then all of that is a barrier to implementation, because the beliefs of the leader are, well, if I use it, it's going to make things worse. So I'm not going to use it, even though I've been taught it. So what we do is we work very hard on in the what I would call the sort of face-to-face elements of our work, on shifting beliefs of why certain pieces of the way you run your business and systematization and using playbooks is going to benefit them, is helpful, and overcoming those barriers to implementation. So that's probably the first one. The second one I'll share is,
and I agree with you, by the way, when we do the followed by all and the implementation of the processes, the first thing is the mindset. That's what we talked about, because if you don't have the shift in mindset, it's not going to work. So I agree with you.
It's never going to work. No. And 83% of change initiatives fail because people aren't on board, for whatever reason. So you've got to get people on board.
And no matter how much AI you use or whatnot, it's not going to get the people on board, because it's just not going to. That is the thing, is like when we make a decision, we make something happen. When we don't have the decision, it doesn't happen. And the decision is the first thing that we need to do there. Is like, yes, we are going to work and it's a decision as a team as well to build it, that us as an organization, we're going to work towards that.
Yeah. And we all have to agree. And often what happens is we agree in public and disagree in private because we don't believe that it's the right thing to do. So then we're immediately undermining the change process or whatever it might be. I say there's multiple of these, so I won't go into all of them. Another one that is quite frequent barrier to implementation, though, is you've got a leader who goes on a systemization program, or goes on a leadership program, or goes on some sort of development, and I call it drinking champagne through a fire hose. So they've been given all this great stuff over the course of a day, a week, a month, however it is, and then they're expected to go back and implement it. But while they've been away on this course, whatever it looks like, their emails have been stacking up. They've had to move meetings out the way, so the rest of their week is really full of meetings because there's so many meetings in their diary. And when so they look at their life when they come back, and they go, well, I'll just play catch up this week, and then I'll put it into practice next week when I'm a bit less busy. But we never get less busy. In fact, we get busier and busier.
We do.
And so all of these great intentions to implement are undermined by a lack of bandwidth or latitude to be able to put anything into place, and also a lack of implementation support. So what we do is actually, the first month of our program is creating bandwidth for people to make the space to be able to implement the stuff they're learning, by getting rid of meetings, by stopping doing things, by delegating things, by outsourcing things, whatever it is. We give you a series of playbooks that allow you to do this in a really positive, meaningful way that means you get your 4 to 6 hours a week back to go, okay, what am I going to do next? What am I going to think of to improve
that's
the
a
business?
danger too, because you get the 4 to 6 and they act as a vacuum, and vacuum will always attract things to fill it, right? So we have to make sure that once you get a bandwidth, it's immediately, you put a stop there, like, you put something there so it doesn't attract other things into those times.
Exactly. So we need somebody who's going to hold them accountable over the course of the change period, the growth period, who is constantly encouraging them, coaching them, and holding them accountable to do the new way of operating in the space they've created. And so, one of the barriers to implementation is I was left alone and I didn't have any support, or so I just slipped back to old habits. And I had great intentions, but it just didn't happen. So what we do is we're creating a bit of peer accountability with the people that are going through with them. So is it your leadership team? Are you part of a cohort? Whatever it might be. But we're also constantly connecting with those people in these micro connections. So is it every week you're expected to share the thing you tried this week to everybody else and how it went? Or is it listening to a podcast that we've given you? Or is it sharing another framework or revising a framework so you get your head around it again? Is it giving you a piece of a very small, we call them pebble in the pond projects, but basically it's like sharing something you've learned with others. So you've got to get your head around it and use it to share it. We're constantly over a period of time, these 3 to 6 months, reinforcing the behavior change, the habit building, which is kind of like building a habit for fitness training. You can learn all the things you want about fitness, but unless you go out and train, you're not going to get any fitter. And so we want our leaders and our founders to be constantly focusing on, how do I use this as my new day-to-day operating system? And I've got to report to somebody at the end of the week who I've paid money and is holding me accountable. And I've got to also stand up in front of my peers and tell them what I did or didn't do. And that's even more embarrassing.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Jimmy, wow, so much information. So if our audience would like to talk to you and find out more, how can they do that?
A variety of ways. You can go to our website, which is jblhighperformance.com. In there, you'll find heaps of blogs, information, and freebies and resources that might be useful. You can have them for free. You can also go and have a look at our digital platform, which is called aidencoach.io. So it's AIDEN coach.io. And that is basically digital Jimmy in your pocket. And you can get up and running to build a performance system inside your business that it helps you manage goals, accountability, journaling, reflection, coaching, all sorts of things in there. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn, Jimmy Burroughes, and I'm always happy to have a chat with anybody. I've got a strange spelling of my name, so it'll probably be in the show notes, but find me on LinkedIn and happy to have a conversation.
Fantastic. Well, Jimmy, thank you so much for being a guest on this podcast. It's a wonderful conversation.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to the System Simplified podcast. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.